Adding to a very mixed picture for the Eurozone's largest members, the Netherlands experienced a sharp economic contraction in the first quarter. Joining me down the line to discuss if this is a one-off or sign of something more concerning is Joost van Leenders. Hello Joost. So according to official estimates, Dutch GDP was 1.4% lower in the first quarter of 2014 compared to the previous quarter. The Netherlands is of course one of the largest gas-producing countries in Europe. But are the suggestions this contraction is simply transitory and largely due to a very mild winter across Europe really justified?
Yes, that is clearly justified. When you look at natural gas exports, for example, they were 25% lower than in the same quarter last year. So there you see the contraction, the negative impact it had on GDP. And it also has an impact on consumption, because consumption of natural gas was a third lower than in the same quarter last year. So there's clearly a big impact on the overall economy, which you see in the GDP numbers.
Okay, so if you are expecting a rebound, by how much would you forecast for the coming quarters?
The weakness in the first quarter was mostly natural gas. It was also a bit of a reaction from a very strong fourth quarter of last year, where we had 1% quarter-on-quarter growth. So that was also a part. So you might see a bit of a rebound in the second quarter again, but not that strong. I would say maybe in the 0.5% range, which would be pretty good for the Netherlands.
The underlying economic recovery continues, insisted the country's official statistics agency. Yet, in the labour market, there is hardly any recovery to be seen. The number of jobs fell by 32,000 in the first 3 months of this year. Is this still part of the recovery, or are you concerned things in the labour market are getting worse rather than better?
The labour market data were clearly disappointing. When you look at developments in the labour market, we saw it improving. The quarterly drop in the final quarter of last year was less than in the previous quarters, and now it's accelerating again. It's partly healthcare, child daycare, home care, which saw declines, construction a bit less. So yes, it is disappointing, but I don't think that it will stand in the way of a recovery. We saw an increase in temporary workers, which is encouraging. And when you think of possible drivers for growth in the Netherlands, business investment would be one of them, and that was pretty strong in the first quarter, up 6% year on year. And exports should be a contributing factor. About 25% of our exports go to Germany, 11% to Belgium, and other countries where we have relatively large export shares are the UK and the US. And these are all countries which are growing relatively strongly or even strongly. So that should be positive for the Dutch export sector and for the Dutch economy. And that should also then filter through into investments and consumer spending. And something else is fiscal adjustment. When you look at the IMF data, the fiscal adjustment needed to stabilize debts is minimal. What is expected this year is also quite minimal after a sharp fiscal contraction last year. That's not just in the Netherlands, it's almost all countries, or many countries at least in Europe, but at least the fiscal drag this year will be less than the next year. So the first quarter, I think it's temporary, and even though the labour market is weak and it's usually lagging, it won't stand in the way of recovery, I think.
If sustained, the divergences across the bloc could make it difficult for the European Central Bank to set an interest rate that is appropriate for all economies. Has this added to the central bank's headache, or can they really pass it off as one-off circumstances? And how do you see the data affecting the euro in the coming weeks?
Yeah, the different developments in countries is always an issue for the ECB. Germany had a very strong quarter, up 0.8% quarter on quarter. It's almost Germany versus the rest. So I don't think the strength in Germany will keep the ECB from further action. And also, Germany is also temporary. We've seen slowdowns in Germany in exports, in orders, industrial production. So the second quarter will already be lower in Germany. The big issue is inflation, and that's Eurozone-wide inflation, which the ECB thinks is too low. And Mario Draghi has almost announced some action in June. So we expect a rate cut. We expect a negative deposit rate. We've seen the euro already reacting, so I think that is already priced in. They might do nothing in June, which I think is unlikely, but if they will, then we would see a reaction of appreciation in the euro, which would probably force the ECB to do something later on anyway. But for now, we expect a rate cut from the ECB, and we think it's largely reflected in the recent depreciation of the euro.
Joost, thank you so much for your time and insights today. Complementing Joost and I's conversation is Sofia Eribo's interview analysing the Italian GDP figures. For me and for now though, it's goodbye.